Yep. Good afternoon. This is Tony Lanzafame from Microsoft, the Security and Compliance Solutions Specialist. This is our first webinar in a series of webinars focused specifically on compliance, and we're going to talk about Microsoft Compliance Manager today.
Okay.
And Ramirez will be leading the session. He's our technical specialist. If you're not speaking, please put yourself on mute. We will be taking questions in the Q&A window throughout the session. And we'll open it up to verbal questions at the end. So with that being said, I'll hand it over to Leo.
All right, thank you, Tony. Good afternoon, everyone, or excuse me, good morning, or depending where you are. My name, as Tony mentioned, is Leo Ramirez, and I'm a pre-sales subject matter expert for compliance solution here at Microsoft. Just to give you a little background about me, before my current role, I actually worked on another team with Microsoft called Fast Track, and I used to help customers deploy Microsoft compliance solutions. Also, before coming to Microsoft, I was a consultant and I have over 20 years experience as an IT/security professional. Outside of Microsoft, my passion is fitness and helping others achieve their health and fitness goals. So do not be surprised if during my presentations, I often make comparisons to health and fitness. So like as Tony mentioned, this is going to be the first of 6 webinars we're going to be doing for compliance solutions. So please put any questions you have in the chat. And if we have time at the end, we'll come off mute and answer any questions. Now, what you're going to learn today is that Compliance Manager, it's a tool that helps teams work together. You're also going to learn how it can be used to simplify compliance and reduce risk. So whether you're a CISO or risk officer, maybe you're an IT admin or a member of the security team, or even an auditor, you can all use Compliance Manager together, and it's going to help you work on reducing risk and meeting those regulatory requirements. So being that all of us here on the call, we're in the public sector. So compliance, no doubt, is an important topic and certainly a priority. So we're not going to spend time on too many slides today, but I do want to go over some things before we dive deep into a demo. All right. As we all know, data is increasing tremendously, whether it's customer data or citizen data, and it's becoming a challenge to protect that data. To make matters even worse, managing risk is another challenge, a significant challenge, especially with this pandemic driving remote work. This gives malicious actors even more opportunities to steal that sensitive data, and also increases the chances of data theft or data loss by internal employees within the organization. Now, these are some statistics from a study that was conducted in 2019, but we can probably all agree that they still apply. Regulatory updates continue to go up on a daily basis. More than half of organizations consider cybersecurity risk their biggest concern. And the #1 challenge is identifying and assessing risk, primarily because it's such a huge task and it takes a lot of planning and time. Now, many of the public sector customers that I work with, they need to comply with either CISO, IRS Publication 1075, HIPAA. They're following one of the NIST frameworks or FedRAMP, or they need to comply with a local state privacy law or regulation. Bottom line, it's not an easy task meeting any of these guidelines because there's so many policies or controls that are defined within these requirements. For example, let me show you the CISO security policy that I downloaded from the FBI website. It's only 253 pages, and there are 13 different policy areas that may or may not apply to an agency. Similarly, this is the IRS Publication 1075. Again, 180 pages, and it also has 13 different policy areas that are used to ensure that the policies, practices, controls are used to protect the confidentiality of FTI. Now, to better understand my customers in the public sector, I've actually read both of those documents, so I can sympathize with you. Now, on the next few slides, I want to share with you what I'm hearing when I talk to customers in the public sector. So when I talk to CISOs, they're echoing similar to what Andy says. They're trying to keep up with regulatory requirements, but it's a challenge because regulatory updates are changing so much. And this applies to the CISOs, risk management officers, and compliance officers that I'm speaking with. They also say that they need a tool that helps their teams collaborate. They're using different tools from different systems, and they're not always working together. When I talk to security and infrastructure leads like Laura, they're saying something similar. Their teams do not have the expertise to implement these controls to meet regulatory requirements, or they're following a framework and they just don't know where to start. They also report that point-in-time assessments, they're either not effective or they're not working. Many times they're using an Excel spreadsheet. Also, when I talk to IT admins, like our friend Steve here, they're saying, I got the technical solutions. That's not a problem for me. I just don't understand all this regulatory compliance stuff. And they want to implement the solutions, but they don't have the tools or the guidance. And this is how I respond to them. Compliance manager can help those CISOs, risk managers, compliance officers. Compliance manager can also help security and infrastructure leads. And it can also help sysadmins, IT admins, and even auditors. And here's why. There are over 600 out-of-the-box assessment templates that you can use that are going to help you along your compliance journey. So if you need to comply with CISO, IRIS, Publication 1075, HIPAA, whatever, there's an assessment template that's already built for you. And assessment templates, they're being added all the time. I remember less than 2 years ago, there were only about 18 assessments. And now look where we're at, over 600 plus. Here are some of the reasons why Compliance Manager simplifies compliance. It's easy to use, plain and simple. There's a simple design that makes sense both for IT admins and compliance stakeholders. It translates regulations and frameworks that are not always easy to understand and puts them into simple language. It's a single tool that helps teams collaborate and work together towards improving their compliance posture. And it has built-in automation and control mapping, and it can also help you stay current with your regulations. There's a risk-based score that helps you understand where you're at in your compliance posture. To me, Compliance Manager is a lot like a fitness program that's already built for you. All you have to do is follow the steps and you're going to get healthy and fit. Here are some of the use cases for Compliance Manager. You can get started right away with the data protection baseline. This helps you implement some best practices that are good for any organization. You can also use one of the 600 plus regulatory compliance assessment templates that can get you started right away towards achieving compliance. Or you can use it as a risk management tool to assess and monitor risk across your organization. You can also use Compliance Manager for auditing to demonstrate control effectiveness, and this can be useful for internal or external auditors. All right, so let's stop talking about it and let's see how simple Compliance Manager is to use for your team. Let's get into the demo. All right, so you can get to Compliance Manager by browsing to compliance.microsoft.com. There are some permissions that are required. All right, thank you. All right. Minimum role group permission requirement for a Compliance Manager is either Compliance Manager Reader or an Azure AD Global Reader. There are role groups for editing and Compliance Manager, and also test results and managing assessments and templates. All right, let's go back to Compliance Manager. So you'll find it over here on the left menu. You click on Compliance Manager and it brings you to the overview page. And right away, you can see something that stands out, your compliance score. Right now, I'm at 44%. What does that mean? Well, this means that the customer, your points achieved, that means you, the customer, you've implemented 269 points out of, what is that, over 15,000. Microsoft, there's Microsoft managed points. Microsoft's implemented everything on their behalf because you're in a cloud environment. Microsoft has already done their part of the work. Going over to the right, these are the key improvement actions. These are the top key improvement actions that you can get to work at and get started right away to start moving this needle towards 100%. And if you notice, these are at 27 points. These are all worth 27 points. One of the top questions that customers ask, well, how is a compliance score calculated? Let me show you. So there are 3 different types of actions. You have preventative actions, detective actions, and corrective actions. And whether they're mandatory and preventive, those are the ones that have the highest points. But if they're discretionary and preventative, those are 9 points, and so forth. So the more weighted points are the ones that are mandatory and preventive. And those are usually all technical actions. There's 3 different types of actions as well in Compliance Manager. You have technical, documentation, and operational. All right, let's scroll down. Here's an area that's useful for those security leads and those infrastructure leads. Compliance score breakdown. So we can see that the area for protecting information is at 3%. Control access is at 10%. Managed devices is at 0%. The security lead or the infrastructure lead can actually go into these improvement actions for protecting information and assign all of those improvement actions to the correct team. And I'll show you an example of that shortly. I'm going to wait for that to refresh. I'll go back to the overview page, and I'm going to scroll back up. There's also an area for solutions that affect your score. And we see, for example, audit. There's 16 remaining actions that I need to implement for the auditing solution. Let's just click on View All Solutions. And this brings us over to the Solutions tab. That's two tabs over from the overview. So here I get a view of all the solutions within my tenant that can contribute to increasing my compliance score. If I click on audit, I see I have 16 remaining actions. And again, all right, I can go through these one by one if they apply to my organization. Me as a security admin, or excuse me, a security lead, I can start assigning these to different team members. I'm going to assign this one to a user like Steve in our example earlier, who's an IT admin. Steve is a guy named Alex in my environment. So I assign this to Alex. Alex is going to get an email letting him know this compliance manager action, improvement action, has been assigned to you. One of Alex's pain points is, hey, I don't know how to implement that. Well, we're going to show you how compliance manager helps Alex, the IT admin. Once he gets that email, just click on this email that shows that a compliance manager action has been assigned to him. He has permission, so he's able to log into compliance manager. Wait for that to refresh. All right, Alex is in compliance manager. He's in improvement actions, and he's going to see all the improvement actions that are assigned to him. All right, here's that automate log retention. So if Alex clicks on that improvement action, let's see the workflow that Alex as an IT admin or security admin has in this tool. Alex has never implemented this solution. Within this improvement action, he gets guidance on how to implement, gets instructions. It even provides documentation that Alex can use to learn more about how to implement log retention in Office 365. He reviews the documentation, step-by-step instructions. He goes back, hey, okay, I know how to do this. He has a convenient link right within the improvement action that takes him exactly to where he needs to go to actually implement this improvement action. Clicks on the link. It takes him to the auditing solution that coincidentally is also in the compliance portal. And he has access to the retention, to create a retention policy for auditing. Once Alex completes that action, he can update the control, the improvement action. He clicks on implementation details, edit implementation details. He has options, whether for not implemented, implemented, alternative, implementation planned, or out of scope. Maybe this doesn't apply to your organization. You can select out of scope. But Alex, this applies to his organization. He selects implemented. He provides a date. And then he clicks save. I want you to notice something when this refreshes. He still doesn't get the points because points achieved, it still says 0 out of 27. In order to achieve those points, the status has to be implemented and the testing status has to also be passed. Have to have a status of passed. So Alex's manager or an auditor comes in here, verifies that it's been implemented, and also passes it. So now that he clicks save, let's see those points. All right, now he's achieved the points. He has 27 out of 27. So we see that there's a workflow that's useful for not only for the infrastructure lead, but also for the IT admin. Let's go back. Let's go back to improvement actions. And actually, let's go to the assessments tablet. Assessments templates. This is the good stuff. Because right about now, some of you are probably asking, well, where are the assessment templates? If you go to the assessment templates tab, here you can see all of the assessment templates that can be added in Compliance Manager. Now, if you notice, there's templates that are included, and there are templates that are premium templates. Premium templates require an add-on. So just know for government customers, let me show you. This is what's included. But let me rephrase. All customers, regardless of your licensing, get the data protection baseline. If you have an advanced SKU in GCC, sorry, you get CMMC's levels 1 through 5, GDPR, ISO 27001, and NIST 800-53. Other templates like CISO and IRIS, those are advanced SKUs. All right, just wanted to clarify that. All right, going back, so you can see all of the assessments that are available. Once you're ready to add your assessments, you go to the assessments tab, and here I've added several. I have CISO, I have IRS 1075, HIPAA, and a Georgia Protection Act. Let's just click on CISO before we add a new one. Here we can see that for CISO, I'm already at 49% in my progress towards compliance. Within this assessment, I can see the controls, all the controls that are related to CISO. And if you notice here, under the control titles, these are actually the control families. Access control. If we go back over to the CISO security policy on page 24, notice that there is a policy area for access control. All of these policy areas are the control families in the CISO template. Just lost it, but those are all related. Those are all coming in, and all of those controls are in here as well. Open that back up. So this is just showing you the value that Microsoft Compliance Manager, how it's bringing all of the related information in to help you towards achieving compliance for CISO compliance. We go to the improvement actions. These are all the improvement actions that are related to CISO. So let's just click on, let's click on a technical control. So if I click on this one, for example, block all Office applications from creating child processes. Again, this is where an IT admin or a security lead can assign this improvement action to someone on their team. They'll get the instruction on how to implement. They go to the testing, and once it's been tested and passed, we can also see other frameworks or regulations that this particular improvement action applies to. We see that it applies to the default data protection baseline, but it also applies to HIPAA or IRS publication 1075. What this is telling us is if you're tracking for these particular assessments as well, once you implement this improvement action, the points are going to be achieved in each of these assessments as well. One thing I didn't show you earlier is you can also attach documentation for a particular implementation action. So if you need to, if you need to prove that you've implemented this or provide some type of documentation for an auditor, you can attach documentation to each of these improvement actions. Let's go back to assessments, something I want to highlight here. You see how this one says pending update? Periodically, as we mentioned earlier, there are updates to these assessments. Well, these updates are being brought into Compliance Manager assessment templates. So if you click on the pending update, it's going to show you what kind of changes are going to be made to the assessment. You don't have to accept. You can actually delay it, but you can review what's changing, get some details. You can also create a new template if you don't want to apply these changes to the one you're currently tracking. So this is showing us that it helps, Compliance Manager can help you keep up with those regulatory changes. You don't have to read about it in the news, or compliance officer doesn't have to constantly track everything in a spreadsheet. All right, coming back, let's go over how to add an assessment. So if you click on Add Assessment, walks you through a wizard where you can select the template you want. I'm going to choose CISO just to show you. I can have multiple assessments for the same thing if I want. All right, I'm going to create a new product. I'll just call it CISO. I'll call this CISO template for NYC2. All right, we also have an option for groups. Now, groups in Compliance Manager has nothing to do with security groups. These groups are containers. So for example, if you want to separate your assessments by year, by region, by department, you would put them into different groups or create a new group. For example, if I wanted this one to apply to my Department of Corrections, I could create a new group. I could also copy all data from existing groups to the new group. The implementation details, the test plan, or the documentation. Click on Next, and then I would click Create Assessment. Takes just a moment. While that's creating, I'm going to go back to assessment. And there's another thing I want to highlight for CISOs and auditors. One thing of value is sometimes a risk manager, a CISO, or a compliance officer, they want to know the status. How are we doing towards achieving CISO compliance or IRS publication 1075? Well, you can actually, within the assessment, generate a report. And what this does is it creates an Excel spreadsheet letting you know how well you're doing. So let's just open up what that report looks like. Creates this report, shows us all the different controls, the titles, the status, and the score, whether the customer managed or Microsoft managed. This report can be sent to whoever's asking, hey, how are we doing? Convenient report without giving them access to Compliance Manager. Now, somebody is probably asking, well, what if we have solutions that are not in Microsoft and we want to track those improvement actions, those controls? Well, you can create, if you have the correct licensing, you can create custom templates. We have conveniently put a file in here, that you can download and follow the instructions and walk through the steps of creating a custom template and then import it into Compliance Manager and start tracking that way. You can also extend an existing template. So for example, you want to use NIST cybersecurity framework, but there are other things you want to add to it. Well, you can extend a Microsoft template. Simply walk to the wizard, choose the template you want. Cybersecurity framework. Upload the template, and you can add to it. Very convenient. All right. So going back to the overview page. So as your team is working together, little by little, you're going to see that needle making progress. One thing else I wanted to point out. So if we go back to solution areas, you can always get an idea of where you're at point-wise. So right now for audit, I see 27 out of 70 points. Potential, 43 out of 70. And we can also see where we're lining up against other assessments. For example, for the Georgia Protection Act, I've implemented 2 out of 12 improvement actions. For IRS 1075, 11 out of 835. So showing us that we have a long way to go. I'm going to go back to the slides. All right. So through this demo, we've seen that Compliance Manager can help Andy, who's a CISO or risk manager, meet regulatory compliance for CJIS. We also demonstrated how Compliance Manager can help them keep up with regulatory changes, and that he can continuously demonstrate that they're making progress and provide that information to auditors. And we've also seen how Compliance Manager helps teams collaborate. For Laura, who's a security or an infrastructure lead, we've seen that Compliance Manager can help teams implement those controls. They have the guidance. They don't have to start from scratch when following a framework like NIST. And they don't have to use these point-in-time assessments that go out of date. Steve is happy because he doesn't have to understand regulatory compliance. He has the guidance, he has the guidance he needs in order to implement those controls. So my question to you is when are you going to get started? Compliance Manager, to be honest with you, I love the solution because you can use it not only to achieve regulatory compliance, but it's a good starting point. If you're new to Microsoft 365, it can help you start deploying those solutions that you're working towards adopting. Very valuable tool. To me, it's my favorite compliance solution. And to be honest, it can save your team tons of hours because you don't have to manually map those controls that you're needing to implement, or to reach your compliance status. I mean, hours you're saving is in the hundreds, and Compliance Manager guides you through the process, especially as all of these laws and regulations are changing. All right. I hope you found value in this presentation and this demo. Looks like we have some time left. If you have any questions, please feel free to come off mute. or if there's anything in the chat.
Thanks, Leo. There are no questions in the chat. So yeah, so if anyone wants to ask questions, feel free to come off mute and shoot away.
I don't know if anyone's noticed, you can actually start a trial for premium assessments. This is available to you in your tenant, if you're still seeing my screen. And what it is, it's a 90-day trial, and you'll have access to up to 25 templates. So something to consider. And it'll walk you. All you have to do is click on the link.
So I got a question from Paul. How can we get additional help with implementing and using Compliance Manager? So yeah, so Paul, we can schedule some time with Leo to answer your questions and help you get things off the ground.
Yep. Again, this is going to be the first of 6 webinars. Next week, same time, we're going to have a webinar over Microsoft Information Protection, another solution within the Compliance Center.
Okay, well, it seems like we don't have any more questions. So thank you, Leo. Great demo, great overview. Thank you to the participants for joining. This session, once recorded, will be posted to our YouTube channel, and hopefully we see you next week. Take care.
All right, thank you.